So as we enter the 1462 turn, not much can really be done here. Things have taken such a dramatic and excessive turn in this game. Really right from last year. I pulled up the card, the University of Bologna. That's going to be capable to be funded by the papacy. So right now only one person can even validly use it. And here's the problem. It's time to make the decision on that card, on the Reformation. Now, I can force him to leave the papacy, and he has to abandon the card, and then everybody can bid on it. This may not be the moment to do it. You may want to wait until someone bids this card, because right now, I don't have the advantage in cash, and I can't get England to agree to throw cash in to help me make that bid. England's not absolutely certain they want half of the papacy instead of their own country, because that's what it's going to come down to. The two cards for the papacy are going to be split among people. With so few empires available, France probably also will be split if we're not careful. Right now we've got 1, 2, 3 unaligned people because of all the fallen empires. There would be a fourth one here who could only take France out of the two. Having my own empire, although a smaller one, completely under my control, may be a more powerful position than trying to operate as either the economic or the military side of a single empire. On the negative side, though, well, I've got $6. I think it's the most, I think I've got the biggest bid, so I get the thing that I could choose, which in my case probably actually is going to be the military side if I want it. So yeah, problem is I would kind of like to see somebody buy this, but I don't think anybody's willing to buy it until the card's played. So I'm going to play the Lutheran Reformation. And this guy has to counter it. So what he's going to do is he's going to try to kill Martin Luther himself. It takes a 1, 2, or 3 to kill him. That's a failure. The papal cards are removed along with everything else and are now up for bid as well. Well, still, there ain't many people willing to invest in this until they know, am I going to be, in particular, the Curia, rather than, say, the military side of things. So I don't think anybody's going to bid on this sucker. I've got to start writing down who's been disassociated permanently from any given empire. I think this is the only case we have, but if we see, say, the English deciding to bid, they're holding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, $9. They might be able to get the military side and the economic side of the papacy if they give up England. I don't think that's too likely, though. All right, anyway, I don't think anybody's going to bid on this sucker without knowledge that they're going to be able to control it. And the green cards only come up after that's been bid on. So that card gets discarded anyway. And, well, I think Egypt's going to go to 6 on the papacy. Oh, well, on the Pope himself. And that gives him all the military of Aragon and the Ottomans as well. I'm just kind of putting them there to help remind me. But that makes the next bid of interest. Who wants the papal curia? And here we have $4. This guy has 5. I think it's the best thing he can do is to pick that up, because that of course gives him these and this, which gives him control of the huge papal treasury, which he can use as something of a hammer to get his way with the Sultan. All that's left is France. For $1 each, the Byzantine Basilius could take all of France. Does it matter to him? Does he want it? If he doesn't take it, Venice will take it. And it will help Venice. How much help it is to the Byzantines, hard to tell. But I want it. Just to prevent things from going the other way. Now, I'm going to realign the colors here, I believe. So the Byzantine Basilius should get blue at this point, rather than black. And let's see. That means who was blue? I think the Sultan of Egypt was blue. He is now the Pope. So we'll take white out of his hands. And we got to figure out the Doge of Venice has essentially no color available. We'll make him black. This is getting so complicated here. The Florentine Prince of Athens has... He can remain as Spain because he has the papal curia. He can't use white as well. So that kind of... I'll shake up the colors, but then if I shake up the colors, I've got to worry about ordering as well. And ordering's been shifted because 2 of those cards have gone. So England is going to be in the last place. But I don't know where everyone else is going to fall. I've got to reorder them by number. I don't think there's anything else out there that people want to spend money on, is there? I don't see any nobles that anyone's dying to have. This guy with the library, now the Medici don't have enough cash to be worthwhile. Some of these others are at the $4. They're going to have a military very shortly. So let's look at the 2 people who have some cash. The Byzantine Basilius. He might find the white sheep is helpful to him. He's probably going to be stretching through that. I think I'll pick that up for $1. And let's see. The Cypriot's nearby, but not as clearly valuable to him. The other guy who has cash here is the Empire. He's kind of bought what's near him that he could make some hay out of. Certainly there's value to things up here, perhaps, especially with France now in the game. But how much value? It's hard to judge that there's any great worth there. So I think everybody else is going to hold their cash at this point. This is a huge advantage for the English. They have a ton of cash available, and they may well be going on their expedition to explore. If that's all the card, we're going to building. We're going to have some pretty significant building costs going, but I have to reorganize this as well. As we're going through this bidding, the repurchasing phase, it's becoming fairly difficult to come up with an equitable distribution for the papacy. This player controls the navies. Largely, currently he can set up trade routes for everyone, probably get bribes. The question is, you know, can he defend all of the papacy with those forces? Or is it a situation where, you know, he needs support from the Curia? Well, it looks like other players could kind of intervene in his monopoly running through, especially the Dardanelles there. And so he kind of needs some help. He's got a lot of cash. He could put together a navy that could prevent, or an army or whatever, that could prevent anyone else from really cutting through there easily. But he needs to cut a deal, a believable deal with the Curia. What is believable? Half of all our bribes? Well, then did I really gain anything by buying the more important of the two sides? On the other hand, as the Fatimid, one thing I can definitely set up that's worthwhile is I can set up a route to the Comnenids and deliver them what they need. That I'd like to do. I'd also like to set up a route to the other things. If I could get some cash support towards building up the papacy, I'm willing to fund the Curia, but not with all the money. And the question really is, well, what kind of bribery agreement would the Curia be willing to settle for to make the papacy essentially invulnerable? And that's a hard call, because he loses something. I mean, he invested a lot in this, and he loses something if it falls too. It's not like he wants it to fall, but he wants his share of the cash. So what we're looking at right now is probably 1, 2, 3, all 4, I think, are going to be paying bribes. They'll probably each pay $1. Does it make sense to split that 2-2? Is that good enough? The additional power of having the navies is definitely worth something. I think that's what we're going to go with. Is we'll go 2-2 for now, but when there's an odd bid, when there's an odd one, he's going to get it, and I think that's an acceptable offer. I don't think there's any way you could not come to an agreement there. The only question is, can this guy go it alone as the Pope? And the answer is yes, he could. In particular, he could, because the papacy doesn't rely on caravans at all, he could just distribute his navies as he wishes. But if he's not giving something of value to this guy, and, you know, half the cut seems about fair. If he's not giving that, then, well, why make you safe? So I think there is a general agreement to split the cash, and therefore we're going to see the money being built, and we'll see navies being built coming out of Spain, Ottoman. We refurbished some. I think we actually built a navy here too, just to ensure the defense, but building more so that I can both be defended and have a powerful cash reserve, or a powerful ability to conduct trade everywhere seems of great value. Not a lot in terms of naval movement here. The English did send their round ships off on a voyage, and they brought another one down. Actually, I ought to sail this one out too. Basically, just kind of expanding or trying to protect the fleets that they have. They sailed out to sea here. They're okay if they're at sea. Nobody else has round ships, so actually they're very safe there. I don't know why it's conglomerated. But now we're on the reveal cards. And what we have is Lyon's Press, which will be in Lyon. And that is actually within France, so the French Emperor can support that. That becomes a desirable card to this guy. And you know, it's funny because he's going to buy it. But it's funny because one thing that I'm noticing while I was doing the naval movement, you know, somebody like the Athenian prince, he's completely able to be captured. Now, I believe you can't attack someone if you're the same color, so the white papal forces can't take him out, and they're the people who want to take him out. You have to renounce your empire to fight against someone. So basically, he's essentially aligned with this Fatimid Sultan. He, at the very least, can't be attacked by the imperial troops. So that's the one person who really wants to take him out to consolidate his hold on this great empire. But outside of that, other people could just knock him out. And they have very little interest in doing so. So let's say the English knock him out. Well, what does that do? That gives this guy complete control of the empire. And that's that's the type of reasoning that usually keeps this kind of insane conquering of empires all at once from actually happening, is that it's really not in the player's best interests. For example, who took this out? Spain did. What happened because of it? Spain got taken out. The next to be taken out would have been the papacy if it hadn't been for that card. The English would have taken them out if there hadn't been a card which could have taken it from them again. And that's just the nature of this game, is that once you start destroying empires, the game kind of gets screwy. Now, what about the Habsburgs? The French have some armies, but the Habsburgs do not. France may want to march in and take the Habsburg away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can do that without a problem. And destroy that empire. Unless somebody can come in and defend it. That's probably a mistake. I think the Habsburgs are going to spend $5. I'm just going to go back in time here and make sure that they have troops, because they've seen what happens. If the French send 2 armies over, well, then they're kind of vulnerable, because actually the Pope has an army as well. He has some ground forces. But if the Habsburgs leave themselves open, they will be conquered. Some of these minor leaders, well, you could grab them and you could take their gold. And that's kind of some value, but not much. You could execute them, but that doesn't really do anything. So there's kind of this, well, gee, you know, they're better while they're there because now I can buy them, I suppose, than if they're not. Anyway. Again, no cards I think that anyone particularly wants to purchase for themselves. The Portuguese. Now, see, they're kind of worried as having a good empire with a potential for life. So they actually built themselves a mercenary unit with the thought of, you know, I don't want to just get taken out. I'm in a good enough shape. The Prince of Athens, there are people who most people don't want to remove him from the game. Most people don't want to remove most of the other players in particular. Might be of some value to take the Duke of Milan out, though. Of course, he'll just come back as another leader. It's not like conquering the empire completely. You don't really get something that cleanly makes sense except an enemy out of it, probably. Alrighty. So we go to the big taxes, and we're still at normal taxation. Okay, well, we're at the project maturation stage, and the Genoese Explorer was in the immature projects for this. This shifted up. The English paid the cash for that. It's all English ships. They can do that. Elsewhere, Lyon got moved forward by the French, but now we come to this one problematic one. This library. It's in the hands of the former papal controller, the Doge of Venice. He doesn't have the cash for it. He can't pay 3. He could pay 1 and keep it running, but that doesn't do him much good unless he could sell it straight up. Who does it do good for? Well, someone like Portugal could pay to improve it, but then it's at risk of being taxed all to hell by the Pope. The Pope himself could pay $1 for it, but he doesn't have the ability to subsidize it. Only the Curia has the control over the treasury to be able to subsidize it. Which means the player controlling the Curia could buy it, and it won't be taxed because it's white, but he only has $1 for it, which may not be sufficient. However, it is definitely sufficient if this guy puts it up for auction. So it's kind of a, well, do you want to pay $1 or do you want to get $1 for it? Because you're not going to have the cash nor the power to protect it. And this is like in Lords of Sierra Madre. I got the power. I can buy it from you. So he does. That quickly turns to a half mature, but then it's going to be paid for by the papal power and matured. And this is the first one we've seen matured. This is going to go in Florence. Actually, I lied. Put that money back. This is owned by the Florentines. Give me my $1 back. This is owned by the Florentines. I have $1. They have $2. Yes, I probably won't be able to hold it, but I'm using the black counters, so we're going to take a little black gild. That's going to go up. This is now an edifice that's going to be available here in the Republic of Florence. Probably not an optimal situation, but maybe people will ignore it. It is going to make cash for me if I can get it silk and or spice and or sugar. That's not going to happen this turn. That's the problem with this. But if it's going to cost me $1 anyway, I might as well suck down the Medici money for it. At least it becomes something worthwhile that maybe I can sell for a good deal of money. But the papal troops are probably going to seize it, the location, and then they can tax the shit out of it as it goes. Or they could demand it, essentially, to be surrendered. Eminent domain, right? You know, I'll give you some cash, or I'm going to start hitting it. Because it's currently aligned not with white. It's aligned with whatever color this guy is now, which is essentially none. He has no color. So his stuff can be attacked. And the Medici don't have the money to build up troops. So that's not an optimal situation at all, but maybe someone, like the Habsburgs, will be able to get a pathway there, and then goods will be transferred in that direction. Who knows? Maybe the French will do it. They've got tons and tons of little dudes, of caravans. And now we go to the summer move conflict, and I'm going to take a break. After the chaos of really the second year, this third year has kind of settled down. The French ran and taxed Burgundy, essentially, took his money away, take half of it. They didn't arrest him or anything. There's no point to that. It confuses the game if you start putting heirs in who aren't bid for and stuff like that. And they can just be killed again. Might as well, like I said before, leave these guys in place. Now I had to move the French king, or emperor in the terms that the game uses, in order to move the forces. Move the Pope up to Rome. He's going to be able to move his land forces, maybe grab Florence and put some sort of taxation on that. The Habsburgs actually couldn't quite get to here. They only have, basically, they have 3 caravans. Now, 1, 2, 3, if they drop someone in Lucca, let me get this back. They actually opened things up. They were the last person who did anything other than the English. The English are just gathering their fleets for a potential attack on the Dardanelles. That's, you know, the choke point to the Black Sea. The Black Sea is absolutely vital to this game. Largely because that's where the silk trade is at this point in the game. It may move. It would make sense if it does, if there's a possibility for it doing so. It does so outside the span of the game, though. So, okay. So, what we have here with the Medici, not the Medici, should be Sforza, Milan, right? Yeah, this Sforza, is he's using the Habsburg caravans to get him basically 2 routes. One route is going to be coming up from Genoa, and that's the one that he's going to support the Medici with. Possibility of a bribe involved in there to try to get silk and up there. Now there's silk available here. You can see the Pope has grabbed this. The Mamelukes own the Pope. This is kind of a painful thing to do because he's going to lose his tax value there, but unless he gets a navy there, he has no easy way to transfer goods from this space. There are no other cities there, so he had to give up one of his tax-based cities. In particular, though, he thinks he can get a bribe that makes up for that, maybe 2 bribes that make up for that. So in this particular case, if he ships goods up to Genoa and then they get caravanned over to the Medici, he gets perhaps a gold out of that. And then if he if he also is able to ship goods up to the Comnene, he'll get gold out of that. Now he controls the entire route navally to just about everything. Venice controls the Adriatic, though, which is why this guy may not be useful. Basically, the question here is, this guy sitting here will help transfer stuff by land to Milan. It's a shorter route, but if this guy demands a bribe, that route may not be open, which allows then for the other route to be taken. He'll probably allow this so that he gets the tax for Venice without an additional bribe, but if he didn't have this other option for the Habsburgs to use Genoese port, which would be shifting through Catalonia and then back through Rome and all the way over, you know, it potentially produces a lot of coins here. Well, if he wasn't using that, if that route wasn't available, this guy could perhaps say, you got to give me another gold, not just the gold that I earn for going through my city. So by balancing it out, he's going to guarantee that he gets that cheaper route at a cheaper price. Pretty questionable whether or not the Egyptian route is going to pan out, and that actually might take money out of his hands because of it. So, before we get to actually using those routes, though, there's the potential for there is a new card coming up, a Paleologue Princess. So this will give a claim to the succession to the Ottoman Sultanate. This is almost valueless. It allows you to make your heir legitimate if you end up getting killed. Who feels they might get killed and want this legitimate heir there? I don't think anybody's terribly afraid of it. The only person who's powerful enough that people would hunt is the Egyptian. He's the only person, possibly Portugal, but he has an army now, and there's nobody really near him. So I don't feel like there's any real desire to end up buying an heir at this point. Nobody's rolling in money, although these two have some. So I'll give them each a shot at wanting it. Yeah, they'll each bid a buck on it. What the hell? And we get it here. Now, the problem with this is, if we end up... Do we get a territory out of this? No, it doesn't come with any additional territories. So there's really almost no gain to it. There's no gain except the heir. But because the Ottomans are gone. What it does give them the possibility of the heir. It also has a negative side, which is if he sees someone he'd rather marry, he has to get divorced from her because he's Catholic. And that's potentially an issue as well. I don't think there's any green cards sitting out there that anybody terribly wants. Something, some of these have troops with them. But who cares? It's not like you can take that money yourself usually. The only thing they can really do is help defend territory. The Medici might be interesting, except they're not going to be strong enough to stop the Pope from taking their territory over. Well, that's actually an interesting idea. The Pope might be interested in taking the Medici for a buck. The reason for that is, well, he's already level 3. The only real reason for that is more leaders to lead papal troops. And in fact, anybody white-aligned, and there's one other white-aligned player here, can essentially move those units. This guy's allowed to declare himself aligned with another color at this point. He doesn't see any terrible advantage to it at this moment. Although, if, say, white were to start attacking him, he could say, oh, no, well, no, I actually can't because he's forbidden from white. But if, for example, the Habsburgs were to attack him, he could conceivably convert colors under that condition. But if he ever then gives up that color, he can no longer ever have it. So you want to keep your options open. It does make it less desirable to attack someone, though. So I guess we'll get to the trade routes, and I think they're pretty much set. Do you want a trade route? You will be paying the imperial pair, and they're going to split that money. Let's see how much everybody pulls in. And that's for the bribe. And then after the bribe, all kinds of money goes to territories controlled by the ships. Now, the English might be willing to transport goods for free here and here, but there's still not really much advantage to that. Over here, the money's got to go to the Muscovite prince. Over here, the money has to go to imperial territory. It's because of this Spanish fleet here, it's pretty much guaranteed there. When we get down to here, There are no ports adjoining this that are not Imperial controlled. So there's really nothing, there's no question. The only question mark is going through Venice, and of course he's going to allow that for free so that he gets a buck off of the transit money there, rather than it coming around this way. Because nobody's going to pay a bribe when they can avoid doing so. Nobody's going to pay an additional bribe. There's, of course, the question, do we want to give the imperial twin, the papal twins, as it were, money? But, you know, you don't do it, you don't get your money. You get two, they get a half each, essentially, one between them. That's what the deal is. And that seems pretty fair. I think if you tried to push them to, hey, give us each one, it's just not going to happen. Problem time. 3 of the players had the cash. There's 3 gold in here. Venice doesn't. Venice could promise a buck later. That might be worthwhile. They could also offer this up for sale to someone. They actually need to come up with $2. And they have to pay this route as well. I think the Pope is willing to extend that $2. What he's going to do is he's going to say the Curia can have 2 of the $3. I'll take 1. And what I'm going to do is you owe me 2. You pay it to me after the trade routes happen. He's not bound to do so. Let's see if he remembers. But, you know, if he doesn't, the Pope could take quite a bit of vengeance on him for that. When you're in a powerful position, you can enforce that you get your rights respected, as I found in Crusoe's Planet. For that whole 2 trade route thing to work, Venice has to also agree to pay a buck to the Duke of Milan. The Duke of Milan's willing also to take money on credit, he guesses. It's kind of their, all right, you know, I don't have a way of enforcing this, but if you don't pay me, we're going to be enemies, and we really can't afford to be. So let's help each other out there. The money is going to go through Milan, so I get another buck off that, so that's worthwhile for him. Okay, and so, see, everybody's got kind of a nice little stockpile here. It's not like the papal players are really gaining all that much money. Other people have other ways to get money. For example, the route through Venice is piling this cash up into his hands, as well as those edifices that, well, there's one edifice in place. Milan is also piling up cash on his own just from this transit here. He was able to get, I'm not sure why 3 things went through there. Should have only been 2, right? His and the money for the Medici. I think I added an extra buck that didn't belong there. Hopefully I didn't screw up in too many places. Likewise, you know, we see the Muscovite prince just getting piles of cash here because he's in demand. The Comnenid, well, servicing his own thing gave him a buck. But most of this money, the stuff that's on the board, that's all going to the papal treasuries. So the papacy just becomes a more and more powerful empire, and more can maintain this particular situation where they can dominate trade. And yes, the English are moving their round ships into place for an attempt to choke there and try to cut into that deal, make more money, maybe make it a 3-way deal where everybody has to pay and the 3 of them share it or something. The simple fact that you have a singular empire taking taking the bribe, and that the two players are demanding $2 between them. That's actually made it more profitable for everyone. The monopoly of the trade route has made things more profitable. If it was only one person, it would be even more so. With two, there's kind of this, we are sharing this. We should each get $1 for each person, but that's not been happening. It felt like too much to demand at this point. But they are looking and saying, other people are getting richer than us. Maybe we need to use this force for our own purposes a little bit stronger than we are. Anyway, all these coins that are on the board that aren't covered by anything are sucked back to Rome, and they're going to have piles and piles of cash to update everything. Okay, storms hit everything pretty heavily. We had one round ship here hit, but over here 2 more of them got hit for damage each, which is putting that expedition at risk. As to the money, these are all dimes, all 5 points each. Biggest stack on the board, and it's just humongous amounts of money. And they can just keep cranking that out. On top of that, we're not done with the taxation, and they're still going to be collecting the big money on the taxes that no one else can come close to. I mean, the Habsburgs get 12, but here we're looking at 11, 16, 26 as things stand. And if you piss them off, if you use your Habsburgs to grab some church land, well, when you taunt the biggest thing around, everyone kind of accepts when they lash out at you and crush you. So if you were to do that, as say the Duke of Milan, you might find that your position without an army here is an untenable one, and that the church is going to come knocking and asking for a donation. Venice at least has their little fleet, which they're still paying for. Anyway, we go to the fall movement, which is just pure land movement. And I don't know how exciting that's going to be. I know the French are trying to get their caravan, their huge caravan load, into play so that they can run this, because that's the Comnenid actually who's controlling them. They may try to use it for other purposes as well, but as of right now, the best thing that they feel they can do is to run caravans between to get the spices up to their bank, so they don't have to pay this $1 each turn. They might be able to make more off them by generating a land route this way in competition to the Great Naval Route. At that point then, it becomes, well, do you want to pay this one guy, or do you want to pay 2 people the split fee? And that's hard to judge which way this should go, actually. But, maybe 2 people a split fee, a combined Habsburg-French route between using the overland route, will be able to compete better than this powerful papal aspect. But that, again, is screwing them over. And they may decide to lash out against whoever is setting that up. And the closest and easiest person to do that against is the Duke of Milan right now. So his involvement in trying to cut them out of the trade completely, trade that they have sealed out right now, that probably will anger them. So the auction card this time is kind of an interesting one. It's the Shiite heresy. This allows you to force a Muslim opponent to surrender a card for rebidding or to disalign from an empire. Now, this is kind of a weird situation. There's one Muslim player. He holds what may arguably be one of the more powerful positions in the game. But paying a lot for a card like this, probably at this stage in the game, nobody's got an overwhelming power. He's holding $6. The person who probably would be most interested in it is his partner, actually, whom by bidding against him, he may be causing some kind of strife. Right there. Other people, well, Dodge of Venice is certainly interested in it. in the sense of revenge, but not terribly interested in it in the sense of that he'll get anything for it. Other people are pretty much settled on one empire each, aren't they? We've got the Habsburgs, the French, and the English, who are all separately aligned. There's no way that he's going to get the papacy. So I don't know that this is going to go for that much, even though it's an important card. Because the only person who can really use it without giving something up and maybe not getting as much is his current ally. Of course, by his ally holding it, it might be something to help solidify that alliance in the sense of, you really want to keep working with me. But how much is that worth when they already have intertwined agreements? Now, to him, it may be worth a lot, just because if he does take the lead, it can only be used against him. However, I don't know if anybody's going to bid that up much. Yeah, he got it for 2. Only the Dodge of Venice bid against him. Now we're at the other green cards. And now, some people are kind of considering some of these. So, for example, the Basilius, if he could pick up 3 more cards, he raises a rank. Is that of any importance to him? Yeah, Trebizond has an extra city in it. So he could get another gold. Now, that's not going to last too long. So it would be a high investment cost to get 3, 4, 5, 3 more gold, basically. It would cost him 3 gold to get the 3 gold. Of course, he could eventually move his location if there's someplace else that has a more valuable city. But I think that investing in other leaders isn't really worth it to him. Over here, the Duke of Milan only needs 2. He's got a problem, though, in that he's only sitting in a city that's worth 1 to begin with. And, well, Florence is an interesting location if he could take that over, if he had the additional money for troops. He may want to buy some of these other lords. In particular, Duke of Anjou looks interesting. But if he's going to do that upgrade, he probably wants to get Genoa as well. The Medici are in a particularly interesting location, but they're so vulnerable that unless I take it, it's not going to be worthwhile. And in fact, that's the location with the 2 cities, so I couldn't take it over because they're my ally. I'm not allowed to attack them in that case. Which kind of makes it a harder call, but I'll go for it. I'll put bids on Anjou, and I don't see anybody else bidding on them. The Portuguese might want to, just because they have troops there. Somewhere close to them that could be some annoyance, but money's valuable in this game, and you kind of don't want to use it up for something that isn't directly helping you. Sorry, Milan, not Medici. Keep getting them confused. That's the Dauphin or no? No. I should have a Duke of Anjou somewhere in here, and I'm not seeing him. Well, I'll have to hunt him down wherever his card is. After having bought Angevine, ruler of Sicily, of course. Hey, I've got a lot of Angevines. After having bought enough leaders that I now have 4, I go up to stature 3, and I'm going to flip over there. And I become a more powerful leader, so if a second stack of Habsburg units needs to be moved, I don't have to just rely on the Emperor, or also for any of my own troops. I am the best leader for my troops, my allies, whatever, other than the Emperor himself. So that's kind of neat too. But one thing to keep in mind is I really do want to try to find a 2-city location for now. That becomes less and less important. Genoa would be the good option there, because I get Kaffa there. That wouldn't have been too bad. But then I would have had to buy something like the Dauphin. So I actually bought Genoa, and my intention is probably to take the Medici out of Florence, who are sitting on an important location. But that's probably going to get me into a collision with the papacy. They're not thrilled with the idea of too many hands in this pot here. And that pot's pretty close to the papal power base. I think that's all we're going to see on sales at this point. So we go to winter depletions. I don't know if anybody has 2 armies in their city. The Pope might. There, I have to look through that. And then, of course, all the galleys have to be paid for at this point as well. It's the end of the 1462 turn, and really these early years of the game kind of define what the game's going to be about. I don't know that they really solidify someone's position. Yes, it's important to be able to control the big military of the papacy, given that it stretches, throughout the Mediterranean and is really the power in the game. But as we've seen, a single card can shake that up. And also it is a split ownership, which means it doesn't have the same kind of power that a full empire controlled by one person does. It probably can defend itself, but it's difficult to turn it into money. And it's difficult necessarily to engage in offensive actions just because basically both players have to agree that this is what they want to do. It creates a need for an alliance in a way that some of the other empires, if they're doing well, don't need. Knocking a bunch of empires out of the game, though, that throws things into a bit of confusion, too. So, there's kind of I think this guy's got the lead, even though he doesn't have the lead in cash. But if he starts to be running away with it, if it looks like he definitely has the lead, there are significant ways to affect him and maybe just knock him completely out, even with that power of the papal armies that he can command. As long as this guy keeps funding armies, eventually he gets to a point where he's kind of independent of it, just because he can use his forces however he likes and stop listening. I allow the rebuild and the maintenance costs to be paid automatically without regard to the curia. But any new armies, any subsidies and stuff, that's funded by the curia, and it's that simple. They may come to agreements, though. So, for example, if he builds an edifice somewhere under papal control or not, and then moves an army in to help support it, this guy need not necessarily support that edifice. He might renegotiate terms based on that. Right now, their terms are, we'll split the money. But they'll be bidding against each other on any cards that come up. So they may have to come to some sort of agreement on that. You can split the ownership of a card, but the guy who actually physically owns it for real. You can come to an agreement that, yeah, we both own this and I'll give you half the profit and, well, whatever, I have the option to give you what I said I'd give you. So that's the end of 1462. This has started out as a very different game than any other of it that I've ever played, which is similar to many of my videos. They often seem to change my mindset in ways when I face the game. All right, let's send this one up.